What's going on, everyone? My name is Miles. Welcome back to another Apex Legends video. In today's video, I wanted to give you guys a guide on the Wingman, and the reason I wanted to do this is because you guys did request this a lot in the comments below, but you also need to know how to use this Wingman really well because it is going to benefit you in order to get better at aiming in general, and also in order to get those high kill and high damage games in Apex Legends. So without further ado, let's get into the guide. So there are a few aiming methods in Apex Legends, and a few of these would be the flicking method, the tracking method, and there is definitely a time and place for each of these with different weapons. For instance, you obviously don't have a point to be flicking with the R99. You want to track with the R99, and then you can track if you want to with the Wingman, but you can also use the flicking method. A lot of sniper shots are usually flick methods, especially the longbow and especially the Kraber. So you don't see a lot of people tracking with the Kraber. Usually it's like a flick because you have to lead your shot, and so the flicking method is really good and really something you need to learn in order to master this Wingman. I do also use the tracking method on some occasion, and so I wanted to give you guys an in-depth rundown of all of that. So let's start off with the flicking method. So the flicking method is obviously exactly how it sounds. Is basically you just aiming elsewhere from the target and flicking to the target, or snapping to the target as some may say. And this is going to be really beneficial for the Wingman because this, if you track with the Wingman, a lot of times it kind of obstructs your view of the enemy and where your crosshairs are at. And so I like to do the flicking method because it allows me to see the enemy in my sights, but then also not have my crosshair get in the way of visualizing them, and I can just flick to the target as I shoot. So in order to do this, in order to practice this a lot, I recommend you guys going into the training mode or the firing range and practicing this method that I'm showing you right now. So a lot of times what I like to do is I like to go in front of the dummy, or maybe even to the side of the dummy, or even the moving targets that are moving in the background. And I like to aim a little bit in front of, maybe to the side of, maybe above, or something like that. And I like to just flick my Wingman over and over to the target so I can just get that muscle memory down pat in order to be really good at this flicking method and understanding how much force it takes behind my arm to flick my mouse in order to get where I need to go. And this obviously is going to work exactly the same with a controller. You just want to come into the firing range just like normal and do the exact same things that I'm doing now, and that muscle memory is going to be the same learning curve as of the mouse, so nothing to worry about there. So this is something I would practice for about 5 to 10 minutes before gaming and getting into a really good session and playing. So you guys can do this obviously in your free time before you're playing, or maybe in between a match while you're waiting on a friend or something like that. This is a really good intermission to just kind of practice and stay warmed up and keeping those flicking skills sharpened. This is something I really recommend, and especially with the Wingman being primarily flick shots, this is something you're going to need to get good at. So on the rare occasion that I use the tracking method for the Wingman instead of the flicking shots, it's only when I have a digital threat, and the reason is because obviously I can see the red outline of the enemy while my sights are on them, so it doesn't make that big of a difference for me. And I just seem to have a much better success rate when tracking with the digital threat rather than flicking. So this is something I would recommend you guys doing. Once again, going into the firing range and then practice strafing side to side, because you should strafe while you're using the Wingman. You don't want to be an easy target to hit. And while strafing side to side and maybe throwing in some crouches there like you would normally strafe in a gunfight, try your best to keep the center of your crosshair while aiming down sights with a digital threat or red dot sight, whatever you guys want to use, whatever sight is your preferred scopes, and do your best to keep the center of that crosshair in the center of the person's chest or body or head, whatever target it is that you're wanting to practice on. I usually do in the center of the chest because it's about a good spot to aim, because a lot of the flick shots can pop up to the head. If you're shooting it fast, the recoil can pop up to the head. It's a good little spot to aim. So I like to aim at the chest, and you can just practice going back and forth and just getting good at holding that tracking in the middle of their chest, so that while you're in a gunfight, you're really good about keeping that crosshair on their body, so that when you shoot, you're going to be hitting a lot more of your shots. So the next part of this Wingman guide, I want to cover how you should be aiming with the Wingman at what distances. So if you're at a good 40 to less meters away, you want to be using either the flick method or the tracking method. If you're under probably, I'd say 10 meters away, you definitely want to be using that tracking method, because the closer that they are to your body, the further that you're going to have to flick across the screen. So I would recommend you guys using the tracking method if they are less than 10 meters. And if they're above that, it's really preference up to about the 50 meter range, 40 meter range, something along those lines. And once you get to about that distance, you can either still do the flicking or tracking method, but it's kind of weird. I consider both of these to be honestly the flicking method. But basically, if you want to consider it the tracking method, you can imagine a small imaginary box in front of the person that is running either left or right, and you want to track that small imaginary box just right in front of that person in the direction that they're running. So for instance, you'll see in the training mode right now, I'm doing this method on a target that is moving back and forth in the back, and you'll notice if I aim at the back side of this target, my shot does not hit because they're so far away, and for that bullet time to travel, it's going to miss your shot. So you're going to want to aim just slightly in front of the target. Obviously, in this case scenario, you can aim at the middle of the target just because the target is so big, but in the real world, in the real fights that you're going to be getting into online, you're going to want to aim a little bit in front of the target if they're this far away, considering that their bodies are kind of small and their hitboxes are a lot smaller than this target that you see now. So you'll see how I'm just barely aiming in front of the target and hitting my shots as that target is moving in that direction. So you can either track that small imaginary box in front of the target, or you can just flick to that spot, which is what I like to do. It just seems to be a lot easier for me. And the reason I consider both of these to honestly be flicking instead of one tracking and one flicking is because when you're actually fighting someone at this distance, it's really hard to track that imaginary box in front of them. And what usually ends up happening is you shoot in front of them and then they run past where you were aiming, and you have to just quickly flick to that next spot. So that's why I don't really consider this tracking at all, and that's why I really encourage you guys to get good at flicking so you can get that muscle memory down of how far to move your analog stick or your mouse to get to the point that you want to aim at. So we've talked about the two aiming methods for the Wingman. We've talked about flicking and we've talked about tracking. Now I did give you guys my opinion on what you should be using at certain distances. However, honestly, you can still do both at any distance. You just kind of have to customize it to your own, and I've kind of tried to help you to do that, especially with the imaginary box from 50 meters or more. But the last tip I can give you guys, and this is something that helped me a lot here recently, kind of took me from A tier to S tier with the Wingman, I would say, is to go into the firing range and jump on the zip line that you see here, and then jump off the zip line and get good at like doing 360s and snapping to targets with the Wingman. This is going to enhance the speed that it takes for you to aim your Wingman and flick it to a target as fast as possible. And when I say target, it's obviously easy to hit all these random targets. Make sure you're aiming for the red dummies in the firing range, and you're going to obviously want to hit the shots before you hit the ground. So this is going to force you to get faster. And the sights that I like to use on my Wingman are the 1x HCOG, the 1x digital threat. Sometimes I like to use the 2x HCOG if I'm feeling it, if it's just kind of in the mood, or if I feel like I'm going to be at medium distance. And then other than that, I also don't mind the iron sights off the start of the game because I have the legendary Wingman skin and the iron sights are pretty good. So those are what I would recommend as far as your opticals go. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I really hope it helped. I know that if you take these tips and apply them to yourself, you will get better with the Wingman, because this is all the Wingman is about. It's about flicking, it's about speed, it's about accuracy, and this is definitely one of the best ways to enhance all of those in Apex Legends with the Wingman. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to smash that like button. It really does help me out a ton. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell to get notified as soon as I upload. I'm going to be uploading a lot more tip videos and so many more videos that's going to help you guys that I know you guys are really going to enjoy. And so if you guys do enjoy all these videos, make sure to do all those things. I hope you all have a great day. Peace.
And I think I got one. Yeah, and I think I got one. Yeah,